everyone! In today's episode, we're taking a deep dive into the mysterious world of decision-making psychology. Every single day, we make thousands of decisions, from small ones like choosing what to have for breakfast, to major life decisions like where to live, what career to pursue, or who to spend our lives with. But here's the thing, we don't always understand why we make the choices we do. So, what really happens in our brains when we're making decisions? Are we as logical as we think? Or are our choices more influenced by emotions, biases, and subconscious processes than we'd like to admit? Buckle up. We're about to explore how human decision-making works and why it's sometimes a bit messy. First up, let's introduce the two systems that control decision-making. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman popularized these in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. According to him, we have two main modes of thinking. System 1 is your fast, automatic, and intuitive thinking. It's what you use when you're making quick decisions, like recognizing a face in a crowd or choosing your favorite snack from a menu. It operates effortlessly, often based on gut feelings and experience. System 2 is your slow, deliberate, and analytical thinking. You engage this system when you're solving a math problem, planning your future, or making a big decision like buying a house. It requires focus, attention, and effort. Most of the time, we operate on System 1 because it's efficient, but System 1 can be tricked by biases and emotions. System 2, on the other hand, helps us slow down and make more rational decisions, but it's harder to engage, and we don't always use it as much as we should. So, why is this important? Because a lot of our bad decisions happen when we let System 1 take the wheel for things that actually require System 2's careful, rational thinking. Imagine buying something expensive on impulse or reacting emotionally in a heated argument. These are System 1 hijacks. Okay, so what are these cognitive biases we mentioned? Simply put, biases are mental shortcuts that help us make decisions faster, but they often lead us astray. Here are a few of the most common ones that mess with our thinking. Confirmation bias. This is when we actively look for information that supports what we already believe, while ignoring or dismissing facts that contradict our opinions. It's like when you decide you want to buy a new phone, and suddenly every review you read confirms that this phone is the best choice, even though other reviews might be more critical. You're not thinking objectively. You're cherry-picking evidence. Anchoring bias. This happens when we rely too heavily on the first piece of information we get, the anchor, when making a decision. For example, if you see a jacket that costs $500 on sale for $250, you might think it's a steal, even if $250 is still more than you'd normally spend, because your brain is anchored to that initial $500 price tag. Availability. Heuristic. This bias happens when we make decisions based on the information that's most readily available to us. If you've just read a news story about a plane crash, you might think air travel is unsafe, even though statistically, it's one of the safest modes of transport. The information is fresh in your mind, so it feels more relevant than it actually is. Loss aversion. Humans hate losing more than they love winning. We're wired to avoid losses, even when it's irrational. For example, you might hold on to a losing stock because selling it would mean admitting defeat, even though the rational move would be to cut your losses. These biases are built into the way we think, and they're not always bad. They help us make quick decisions in a complex world. But when they take over in situations that require deeper thinking, they can lead to mistakes. A whole episode on cognitive biases is coming soon. Let's be honest. While we like to think we're logical beings, emotions play a huge role in decision-making. In fact, some neuroscientists believe that without emotions, we wouldn't be able to make decisions at all. Antonio Damasio, a neuroscientist who discovered that patients with damage to the emotional centers of their brain, specifically the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, struggled to make even simple decisions. These patients could still reason logically, but couldn't decide between different options because they lacked emotional cues that would normally guide their choices. Basically, emotions help us assign value to different options. When you're deciding between two job offers, it's not just the salary that matters. How you feel about the office culture, the job duties, and even the commute will weigh heavily on your decision. Emotions help you shortcut the pros and cons list that might otherwise take forever to make. But emotions can also cloud our judgment. For instance, if you're angry, you might make rash decisions that you'll regret later. If you're sad, you might struggle to make any decisions at all. This is why it's important to be aware of how your mood is affecting your choices. Think of it like this. Emotions can be both the gas and the brake pedal in your decision-making process. Too much of either, and you'll end up in trouble. Ever wonder why you're more likely to make poor decisions at the end of the day? That's because of something called decision fatigue. Basically, the more decisions you make in a day, the more your ability to make good decisions depletes. Your brain is like a battery. When it's fully charged, you can think clearly, weigh options, and make rational choices. But after a day full of decisions, whether they're big or small, your brain's battery starts to drain. As a result, you'll either make more impulsive decisions or default to doing nothing at all. Hello, Netflix binges after a long day. This is why many successful people, like Steve Jobs and Barack Obama, talked about limiting the number of decisions they made each day. They would wear the same outfits or eat the same meals to preserve their mental energy for more important choices. Pretty smart, right? No one makes decisions in a vacuum. Whether we realize it or not, our choices are heavily influenced by the people around us. This can be a good thing, like when you take advice from a trusted mentor. But it can also lead us astray, especially when social pressures and groupthink come into play. For example, think about the bystander effect. When something bad happens in a crowded area, like someone collapsing on the street, people are less likely to help if others are around. Why? Because everyone is waiting for someone else to act, assuming that others know what to do better than they do. This happens in decision-making too. We look to the group for cues, sometimes abandoning our own judgment in the process. Peer pressure is another powerful social influence. We want to fit in, be liked, and avoid conflict, so we often make decisions that align with what the group wants, even if it's not what we would choose on our own. This is especially true when it comes to things like fashion choices, career paths, or even political views. We're wired to be social creatures, and sometimes that means prioritizing social harmony over rational decision-making. You'd think that having more options would make it easier to make a decision, right? Wrong. In reality, having too many choices can lead to paralysis. This is called the paradox of choice, and it's something that psychologists have studied extensively. When we're faced with too many options, we get overwhelmed. Instead of feeling empowered, we start to doubt ourselves and worry about making the wrong choice. This can lead to indecision or dissatisfaction with the choice we finally make, because we're left wondering if one of the other options would have been better. Think about the last time you scrolled through Netflix for 20 minutes trying to pick a movie. That's the paradox of choice in action. It's not just annoying, it can actually make you less happy with your decision in the end because you keep second-guessing yourself. Now let's talk about intuition. Intuition is that gut feeling you get when making decisions, and while it may seem mysterious, it's actually rooted in experience and knowledge. When you've faced a situation enough times, your brain builds up a library of patterns, allowing you to make decisions quickly without needing to analyze everything in detail. While intuition isn't foolproof, it can be a powerful tool in decision-making, especially in situations where time is limited, or when you're dealing with complex, ambiguous information. So, what have we learned today? Decision-making is far from a simple process. It's shaped by a complex web of cognitive biases, emotions, social influences, and even how tired your brain is by the end of the day. While we can never make perfect decisions all the time, simply being aware of these factors can help us make better ones. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate all bias or emotion from decision-making. That's impossible. Instead, the key is to recognize when your brain is playing tricks on you and to take a step back when necessary. That's it for today. Thanks for tuning in and stay curious.